Hello everybody and welcome to the next episode of Inside Thrustmaster. Today I'm extremely excited to be joined by one of the legends of rally when it comes to sim racing. He is not only an EWRC world champion, but he's also proven that you can take it from virtual to reality. It is of course no other than Jon ARMSTRONG. Jon, thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi Josh, thanks for having me. It's great to be here, and I don't know if being a veteran of rally is a good thing, but I am getting a bit older, and looking forward to discussing everything.
Definitely. Well, you've dodged the grey hair so far, so that's always good. So look, Jon, as we kind of been going into these episodes, we're wanting to get to know a bit more about the people behind the wheel. So what do I need to know about the younger Jon, his experience with sim racing and motorsport that's kind of shaped you to be the sim racer and rally driver you are today?
Yeah, I guess like a lot of people who get into motorsport, I grew up sort of around it, and then it sort of leads you on that path. You either pick it up and love it, or you go and do something else. So I was one of the kids that just loved it, and we used to go and watch the local rally events. And my dad, he actually done some amateur co-driving, and he was also a rally mechanic as well. So I had loads of opportunities to get nice and close to the cars and, you know, smell the fuel and the tires and all those smells. That's really what just got me into it, is just the sort of the passion behind motorsport. So I guess then how I got involved in gaming was I had a PlayStation 1, and I seem to remember I had the first Colin McRae rally, which would have been the late 90s. So I would have been maybe 4 or 5 years old. So I started playing that on controller, and I guess from that point I always had a keen interest in video gaming in general, but more so on rally games and racing games. So I sort of played on pad for many years, and then I think whenever I was maybe like 10, one Christmas I got my first steering wheel. I seem to remember it was another brand that was a Thrustmaster. We maybe won't mention which one, but it was quite a entry level wheel, you know, very, very basic, but that was sort of my initial steps into, you know, getting involved in the eSports side of things.
Amazing. And, I remember playing some of the early Colin McRae games as well. And I remember like learning the basic fundamentals of how to drive a car. I think there was like a driving school you had to do to get started and stuff. But something I'm really curious about, I'm sure people who have kind of followed you in your sim racing journey are also curious about, is were you always competitive when it came to sim racing, or was there a period where you were just playing games casually before you took it seriously?
It's a good question. I think whenever you compete in motorsports, whether that's sim racing or in the real world, you normally have that sort of desire somewhere in you deep down that you're very, you know, a very competitive person. So I was probably always trying to beat the times of other people, and I think I was always quite good at sim racing, but I think over the years with more and more practice, that's when I got the consistency, which is a big important part, because whenever you're young, it's sometimes hard to have the concentration to keep it on the track, especially on some of the real long stages that could be, 15 or 20 kilometers long. I'd say I was always quite good at it, but I never really competed in any competitions at a young age. I think I went to basically there was a company in Northern Ireland who they sort of had different venues scattered over the country, and you could go and go for a party and with your mates and hop on the simulators and race against each other. I think they had like R Factor and Richard Burns Rally, and I was really interested in Richard Burns Rally from whenever I was maybe like 12, just because it was so hardcore and as close as you can get at that point to being in a real car. So I was really really into that, and they used to run online rallies, and it was sort of run as a live event. You know, you'd have to join at a particular time on a Wednesday evening or something like that. So that really excited me. You know, you sort of got those nerves, and you know, you really wanted to win. And I used to go and win those against, you know, all sorts of different drivers, usually you know, a lot older people were doing it. I was like this 15-year-old kid that was coming in and winning it. So that was one of the first things that I was probably done competitively in sim racing. And then I won a sim racing competition at Rally Spain in 2010. It was like a Monster Energy event that was set up by Ken Block, because he was competing in the rally. So, you know, it was like an event just to get people interacting with the team and everything. But they were using Dirt 2 as a game, and basically it was to set a time, and there was 10 people that got actually, it wasn't chosen at random. They were handing out cans of Monster Energy with numbers on the bottom of it, and they would call out the numbers at random, and that's how you got your opportunity to go up and set the time. But the can that I got, or I think my sister got, which was the first number called out, was Ken's race number 43. So I got to go up first, set the time, and I was actually the fastest. So that was another little bit of let's say the competition side, and my prize for that was actually a passenger ride in the shakedown. So that was an amazing experience. So I got to go out in the WRC car and experience the sort of behind the scenes service park and see all the drivers and everything. So that was really cool. But then from then onwards, I would say I was fortunate enough to already be doing real motorsport. I started off with quite grassroots level competition, but then that progressed further and further. So that took you know, a lot of my attention, and yeah, it wasn't until later years that I actually done more esports sort of serious competitions.
No, that's amazing. You know, we'll dive into all of those, you know, memories and even the stuff that you've been doing more recently as well. But I guess to start, something that a lot of people are also curious about, and I'm sure that you probably get asked this quite a lot by sim racers, is, you know, the transition from just being a player to becoming a competitor is really quite a conscious decision that you now have to make. I mean, you know, I've had the pleasure of watching some of the rallying stuff you've done on, you know, the dirt games or similar, and I always believe that rally drivers are on a different level because you just don't get that same level of practice as circuit racers. So then when you're actually committing to training and practicing, it's so much more intentional, and the quality of driving is so much higher now than it has been in previous years. What, in your mind, was the big difference between someone who's just quick at the games and good versus, you know, that switch you made to, you know, become competitive and eventually win the WRC eSports?
Well, I think the big switch is the amount of practice that you need to put into it.
Yeah.
You know, as a casual gamer, you're just gonna do maybe an hour or two here and there, and you're not really focused on trying to be the ultimate fastest driver down that stage. But of course, if you go on to the time trial of a certain stage, you'll see who the fastest drivers are, and that's something that you know, I would have been drawn into, you know, having a go at years and years ago. But that was probably one of the biggest challenges, was just the amount of time that you needed to put into it, because in you know, in real rallying you have to rely so much on the pace notes, but in esports you can practice the stage as much as you want and really start to learn the stage, and then you start to find where all the extra tenths and seconds are and where you need to place the car precisely. So you just start to naturally shave your time just down more and more each time that you restart the stage. So that's probably the hardest factor to get over, is just how much of a commitment it actually is. And from what I can tell from any other sim racing esports or probably any other esports. It's just putting that time in that you can really find an advantage over your competitors, because at that level, everyone can control the car. They can, drive it absolutely on limit. But it's finding those edges and advantages over your competitors, and that's just putting in the hours and practice to find, like I said, the best line through a corner, or the best setup for that stage. That became quite a big element of the WRC esports, was trying to find a setup for the stage, because in rallying, the stages, the characteristics change so much on one stage, never mind between different countries. So it was just like hours and hours of trying different springs and differential settings and stuff like that, just to find some sort of advantage. So I would say that is the hardest part. You have to go in willing to spend time on it, and I think ultimately that's probably why I don't do as much now, is because I'm focused on work and on real life events over the last 2 years, so I don't have the ultimate time to put in to be the fastest at the game.
No, that makes sense. I was doing some reading about your sort of racing CV, if you like. I know, obviously, you debuted in the Junior WRC in 2020. You've now got, I think it was 46 stage wins, and of course, like we said, the WRC eSports title as well. Obviously, when you come into something like that, be it the real or virtual element, and suddenly you find yourself at the top, I want to kind of dive into the training side, because it was something I discussed with Camille Pavlovsky on a different episode. Is for circuit racing, it's not just jumping in the sim and turning laps for the sake of it. You're either doing long runs or short runs. You're tweaking the car setup. And I did a little bit of dirt rally as well in kind of preparation for this discussion, and I found I had to physically lift my foot off the brake pedal, because too often I'd be dabbling it, too scared to commit into these corners. But for someone who's watching and maybe wanting to try and emulate your success, what's kind of your advice for a training routine with rally racing and sim racing?
It's a good question. I think it probably depends on the competition that you're involved in, but obviously I won the WRC, so we can focus on that and sort of their how they format their competitions. Typically they will have a select few stages for each event, and I think back then you could have up to a week to complete the event and set your times. So you got 5 attempts to do the 2 stages, and then your best time was the one that counted in the end. So once you get to know the 2 stages, or however many stages it's going to be, then you just want to go into time trial and rinse and repeat. Essentially, you need to get your baseline stage time up as high as you can before you physically feel like you can't go any faster without doing something else. So just go in with the default setup and absolutely go for it through the stage and improve your time, and then whenever you hit that invisible wall that you can't go any faster, that's when you need to start looking at things like car settings, and like I said earlier, there's loads of different settings that you can try to tune and play with and see how that affects your speed. And then after that, there's other things like maybe the settings with your wheel. I found that I could unlock a lot of time by playing around with my wheel settings, and just little things like that can really improve your time. So that's how I prepared for events. And then the mentality with actually doing the event themselves, because it wasn't a live event as such, you could go in and do your times whenever it suited you. Typically we sort of left those as late as you could do it, because then people wouldn't know what the time to beat was. So it ended up that we all done our runs on the last possible moment, like the Sunday or whenever it was. So that's another good tip. But yeah, whenever you go and do it, then you just need to basically nail it. have a couple of practice runs before you go into the stage, and then go in and just do the stage like you just done in the practice runs. Just make sure everything feels good, that the steering wheel feels good, everything's flowing nicely, and that you feel confident that you can go in and make no mistakes. And then just go in and go as fast as you can. And obviously there's going to be an element of not making a mistake as well, so it's trying to get on that limit but not go over it, because if you go over it, then you're really you're going to lose time, and you're going to have to you're going to lose an attempt. Essentially, you've only got 5 or however many, so yeah, you want to make sure that you're consistent as well. So that's how I done the sort of at home runs, and they use them as like a qualifying section of the championship, and then we went to a grand final, which is slightly different in terms of how your approach would be. But yeah, I was never the fastest.
Yep.
Whenever we done the at home sort of qualifier runs, I don't know what could have unlocked more speed for me, but it seemed like some of the other guys, they just find that extra bit. Whether that was what I talked about, it's the doing the practice runs and then going in and doing your proper run. Maybe there was a better way that I could have improved that. Seemed like I only ever won one of those events, which was Sweden. So that demonstrates like I wasn't the best at that, but I was always in the top 5, so I was always scoring the points, and that meant that in the end I got to go to the grand final, and then that's where I really made it count. But yeah, that's what my process was.
No, definitely. I think it's interesting because I was chatting, obviously with other people about this, and I think consistency really for me is kind of how you differentiate between a good driver and an excellent driver. Obviously in circuit racing, it's a bit different if it's just between tracks, but the variation in stages, particularly in rally, can be so diverse. Have you done any rallycross competing or any, can you talk to me a little bit about that? Because obviously that's a unique aspect again within sort of the world of rallying. Can you talk to me about that at all, anything you've done there?
Yeah, well, obviously in Dirt Rally and Dirt Rally 2.0, there was Rallycross included. So I done a little bit of competing in that, especially during lockdown. We had the World RX eSports Invitationals, which was really fun to be a part of. And that included real life World Rallycross drivers who were, trying to keep sharp whenever they could and race in real life, and also some of the best esports drivers in that field as well. So it was a really cool experience. That was sort of, I would say, a mix of both worlds of, well, that's essentially what the discipline is. It's a mix of rally and circuit racing, and it was a little bit more trying to find those smaller tenths. You're trying to find a tenth rather than a second that you would on a rally stage. So, but also it's really difficult to pass on track in rallycross. So you have to be really, really strategic if you're going to pass on track. Or of course you have the Joker lap, which is a lap that's slightly longer that you have to do once a race. So deciding when you're going to take that can have a big influence on the end result too. So yeah, it was really interesting, and I've been fortunate to do 3 rallycross events in real life. So I actually done that with RX 150 buggies, which are really fun to drive, but it was really cool to get the opportunity to do that in real life too. And it's definitely different than rally driving, because it's not just you and your co-driver going down a piece of road. It's you and 7 other drivers going for the one piece of tarmac or one piece of dirt. So I would say, because I always came from rallying, I don't really have that the racing craft that you would have if you were maybe more involved in circuit racing. So my awareness of other drivers and that sort of thing it's either completely off or it's really overhyped. And sometimes I'm just like looking in my rear view mirror, just trying to see where everyone is, and it feels like you're doing that forever, but it's probably only a split second. But it feels like I'm doing it for like a couple of seconds, and then you're like, oh, I need to see what's in front of me. So that was a whole new element and something that's really fun. It's fun to always try something different too. So yeah, I do enjoy Rallycross. I think it's a really cool sport.
No, definitely, it's interesting. I've been kind of listening to how you've been kind of talking, and it definitely strikes me as someone who's very kind of, how would I put it? You like to make sure that you got the right details, you know, and you're very specific. And I think, again, kind of speaking back to the rallying side, like you need to be very precise, I think. So I guess that liberty of maybe having more racecraft, if you're a circuit racer, try and trade that off for, you know, being a bit more accurate with those pinpoint details for someone who's rallying. So I think we've got a good insight there in terms of, you know, the mentality you need to take to be highly successful. But I also want to flip the scales for a minute and just provide people maybe with some insight on when things don't go so well, and kind of the mentality you can approach there. There's I remember watching a clip, and you can probably fill me in on the details of this. I believe you're in Junior WRC, and you had a little bit of a role. I believe, was it in Sweden? It might have been. But obviously, I remember watching that, and I think a lot of people, you know, it was quite a big crash, to be honest. But obviously, that's a moment where if it was a circuit race, maybe you just missed apex, you into the gravel trap. In rally, you know, it really punishes you when you don't get things right. And would love to know more about that and kind of how you bounce back from that mentality of just being able to correct things and move forward.
Yeah, it was in Rally Sweden, that's correct. I've had a few big accidents, but yeah, that was probably the biggest one. Yeah. But you quite rightly point out, you know, in Rally, we're driving down a road that's used by the public, and it's closed for that day, and it means that, yeah, it's not, you don't have crash barriers or tires or gravel pits or anything. You know, if you go wide, you're going to hit something that's, you know, that's there for all year round. It's part of the scenery and the furniture. So, in that aspect, yeah, it's one of those sports that has a bit of risk involved, and I think all motorsport does. But whenever you put that helmet on, and if you're thinking about trying to achieve the best result you can, you know, the dangers and the sort of worries go to the back of your head, and you're just focused on the road in front of you, and that you want to go as quick as you can, do the best job that you can. So from that aspect, it's not something that's too hard to get your head around. But obviously, when you have a big crash like that, it's difficult to come back, because each crash, I found the older you get, the more you start to think about things, and I think that's true if you ask anyone that's getting a bit older. You know, whenever you're young, it's great because you don't really question anything, and you're just going head first. But I think the older you get, you start to look into things more and try to analyze maybe why things haven't worked out. But yeah, obviously you don't want to overthink it either, but it can be difficult to sort of put that to the back of your head, because, you know, when you go to the start line of the next race, and you can start to think about what happened in the last race if you had a crash like in Sweden, and yeah, that will obviously affect your performance. So I think I was just more or less focused on not letting that crash be the last competition that I'd done at sort of WRC level or an international level. So yeah, my motive was to come back and just try to do a better job than that, not crash, and do the best performance I could. Obviously, the first rally back, I had a really good result, and it wasn't what I expected. I actually ended up winning the first round of the 2021 Junior WRC, but I think that also showed that you don't have to be always the fastest either to be the winner. Sometimes if you have a more smart approach, and you think of the whole event, and you try to do a good strategy, then you can actually win as well, because there is an element of attrition, and, you know, people will drop out. So it's all about getting to the finish as quick as you can as well. So yeah, you know, crashes happen, and you just sort of have to think of how you can get past that. And that the crash in Sweden was actually pace note related, and I think I went around in circles with pace notes, and if I had one bit of advice for drivers, just don't overthink that side of it. There's a lot of time to be unlocked with pace notes if you get it right and it's consistent, but you don't want to overthink it too much. So like I tried maybe 3 different types of systems. I think that was part of the issue, was maybe I'd moved around too much, and then it maybe wasn't second nature for the system I was on at that point. And even each rally, the roads change so much, so how you grade each corner can change depending on how wide the road is, the surface, and all sorts of different aspects. But I think you just need to make sure that they're really consistent, and then if they're consistent, you can push and know that it's not going to surprise you. And in that case, it surprised me because I went flat out into it, and it wasn't a flat out corner. So it's just one of those. It's another aspect of rallying.
No, definitely. I think you can obviously translate some elements of that over to sim racing as well, right? Like you say, coming back to that consistency element, and I guess the benefit in the sim is the pace notes are maybe a bit more tailored towards the stage and that kind of stuff. You don't get that personal tweak as much, but the balance is it's kind of pre-constructed for you. But obviously, Jon, we're here with Thrustmaster, so it seems only right that we kind of diverse towards this topic now as well. Obviously, a lot of people will see that you're involved with the Thrustmaster brand, that we're both involved with Thrustmaster brands. I know I get this asked a lot, but I'd love to know your story as well. Where do Thrustmaster fit into this picture for you? How did you get involved with them? And tell me a little bit about that kind of partnership.
Yeah, well, I have one man to thank, and that's Janis Griekman, who's the OG, I think, with Thrustmaster for me anyway. He was and still is a massive part of the WRC and rally community in sim racing. He was the guy who sort of started to run the Facebook group, which has, I don't know how many members, but it's thousands. And whenever I started to become interested in the WRC eSports and started to set times on the leaderboard, I joined their Facebook group, and I started to interact with the community, and naturally I started talking to Janis then, and he was beating my times, and then I was starting to beat his times. We were talking about setups and how to be faster and all these sorts of things. And I think that's a big thing in sim racing is that community. And thanks to Janis, he then introduced me to Eric from Thrustmaster, and quite quickly things evolved, and I was supported by Thrustmaster then for whenever I competed in the 2018 WRC eSports, so the first year that I done it. So that's how I got involved. And the first event that I went to was at Loiac, and I think you were there also, where the TSS handbrake was launched, and I got to meet all of the Thrustmaster family, and meet all the other athletes as well. And it was really, really cool. And ever since then, I've had an amazing relationship with Eric and everyone at Thrustmaster, and they've really supported me all the way. And without their support, I wouldn't have been able to win the WRC eSports in 2018. And then in 2019, I was back again doing the WRC eSports, and I was second that year, which was also a great achievement. So and then they've really supported me also in the real world rallying. They've got behind me and given me some sponsorship towards that, and that's made a huge difference in many different situations where it's really helped get it over the line budget wise, so that I'm able to go and compete. So it's it's fantastic to be involved in them. I love their products as well. You know, whenever I started competing with their products, it really helped my performance. And yeah, I still got the same servo that I was using back in 2018. It's amazing, and yeah, it's their products keep evolving too. I think that's a great thing, is that we as athletes, we get to try all their latest products and give feedback, and yeah, we really benefit from, you know, getting some really cool gear that we can use to go faster.
No, definitely. It's funny, you know, I'm using the TSPC base, so I've had mine for a couple of years as well, and it's interesting just, you know, chatting to yourself and others that those of us who are ambassadors, obviously we kind of have exposure to new products and use them, but it's interesting that we kind of have that sort of old reliable, old faithful that we keep coming back to. So without it sounding too much of like a sales pitch, I suppose, but is there any other support that Thrustmaster gave you that perhaps, you know, people may not see? So for me, for example, you know, the involvement and engagement on social content was hugely important. As a sim racer, someone who maybe was new to kind of the world of marketing and sponsorships and stuff, I didn't realize just how important it is to kind of have regular content with purpose. But is there anything that kind of either Thrustmaster supports you with, or that you kind of help them with, that the average person maybe wouldn't see on surface by looking at the brand?
Yeah, well, I think, you know, I touched upon it. It really is that help with my real life racing. I think that's something that was slightly different for Thrustmaster. I think they've done a few things with real world drivers in the past, but you know, for them to get behind me and support me in that was something I didn't expect, but it makes, you know, total sense. And yeah, to be able to promote the, you know, rally focused products in a rally environment is a good way to market it. But yeah, I think, you know, to be honest, like the whole journey that I've had with Thrustmaster, it's just opened up a whole different world to me. And yeah, I've been on so many different adventures because of it. And yeah, I couldn't pinpoint exact areas, but it's just been lots and lots of different areas of support that has really opened up many different doors. And yeah, I'm really, really thankful for them. I guess one of the cool aspects was being able to be involved a bit more in you know, expos and also commentary roles that I done for the Dirt World Series as well. That was something that Thrustmaster helped me get involved in. So yeah, it was really cool to be able to get opportunities to do something that's a bit more outside of my comfort zone, I guess. Like you were saying, you know, it's just trying something new to improve yourself.
Yeah, definitely. And that kind of leads me nicely on to my next question, which, you know, obviously a lot of people look at sim racing as potentially a career now. I think, you know, we'll probably both agree that since sort of the pandemic, it's definitely become much more viable as an opportunity. You've had a front seat not only as a driver, but also, I guess, commentating and analyzing some upcoming talent. And, you know, what is, in your eyes, you know, what are the key sort of character points or areas of growth that, you know, someone needs to kind of make stand out in order to kind of pursue a rallying sim racing career?
Yeah, well, I think, you know, you need to be determined, and you need that drive to be fast in esports. But like you pointed out, there's a whole umbrella of opportunity that you can do in esports. You know, whether that's content creation, whether that's working in the games industry like I do, also whether that's being an esports driver. There's so many different opportunities. And yeah, I think as long as you've got that passion for whatever sport that you're involved in, whether that's rally or circuit racing or rallycross, as long as you know, deep down have a true passion for what you're doing, then the rest will follow. And yeah, it obviously, you know, takes a lot of effort to come to the top in anything. You know, it's a very competitive industry in all areas, especially if you're a driver. So yeah, your heart has to be in it, and you really have to just have that raw passion to be able to see it through.
No, definitely. I completely agree with what you said there. I think it's, yeah, so important. So the last question, and it's, you know, it's quite a big one. I'll say one of the big questions to last. Obviously, you know, Jon, the 2018 WRC champion for esports, you know, and you had the 2021, you're the runner-up in the WRC juniors as well. What's the future holding for you in terms of both sim racing and real rallying? Can you tell us a little bit about what the future holds for Jon?
Yeah, at the moment it's a little bit up in the air, let's say, with the real racing. We're just trying to pin down what I'll be doing in the future. You know, I think that really highlights why esports is a great thing, because in 2018 I was actually taking a year out from doing WRC 2, which is the second tier of WRC, because I was in a similar position that I'm in now, which is I'm struggling to find budget. But yeah, that just highlights, you know, why esports is so good, because it gives you an opportunity to race and to compete against other people with very little budget requirement. But yeah, I don't know if I'll be competing in esports again, and we'll have to look at that. I think I'm maybe over the hill, but we'll have to see for sure. I wouldn't mind being involved in, you know, a few smaller competitions or something like that. But yeah, we'll just keep pushing forward, see what I can get organized for real rallying. And yeah, obviously I work in the games industry full time as well, which you know, keeps me really busy, and I'm so grateful to be able to do that, because, you know, I'm involved in being able to leave my my mark on, you know, what I grew up around, which is rally games. And yeah, it's so cool to see it from that side now, and be involved in shaping its future.
No, definitely. I mean, the fact that the last time you kind of took some time out, you won an eSports World Championship is pretty scary. So I'm sure there'll be people hoping to see you back in a real life seat. But look, Jon, obviously, you know, we could talk for hours about your involvement in kind of the games industry and kind of bringing over your real and virtual experience together. But we'll maybe save that for another episode. The last question I want to ask with you is, obviously you've got such an accomplished career, and anyone who's in sim racing or rally racing will know, you know, who you are and the history you've got. But what's been the highlight for you, both from the real and virtual worlds in your career so far?
It's probably difficult to see past, you know, being able to win that world championship in esports. You know, that's such a cool thing to be able to say. And actually, sometimes I forget that I've done that. I know it sounds weird, but yeah, it's just, it does. Sometimes it feels like it didn't happen, because it's so surreal, and something that, you know, I really could have only dreamed of. You know, to be a world champion in anything is really cool. So yeah, we'll go with being the world champion in WRC esports.
Amazing. Well, Jon, look, thank you so much for the time. It's been so insightful getting to know a bit more about not only your racing experience, but also kind of how you approach these races at such a fundamental level. It's super interesting. But thank you so much for the time, Jon. Really appreciate it. And yeah, be sure to follow along Jon with the rest of his career.
Thank you. See you soon.